in all honesty, it gets down to rinse and repeat. Once you know who to look for and you know what to say and you know where to find them, it's rinse and repeat, and you can keep growing from station to station from there. And the lucky thing is that a lot of radio stations are operated by some of those same national companies, or at least training the sales reps by the same company. So you start to hear the same exact things.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Richer Geek. We're happy to have Grace Mills with us today. She's going to take a new advertising platform and introduce it to us. Everyone's always heard of, the VAs and the outbound calls. Well, she has found a way, and she has coached almost 300 people in this new way, and she is the new face and coach of REI Radio 2.0. How you doing, Grace?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on today, Mike, and hello out there to your audience as well.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the wholesaling or the real estate, and then decided that Radio 2.0 would be the way to bring everyone.
Oh, absolutely. So I got my start kind of wearing a couple of different hats, like anyone else. I'm in college, I'm struggling to make money and balance out, courses. And, I had a sister that said, hey, you ever try like maybe work at home jobs? And I tried like a telemarketing, and forgive me if, I probably harassed your phones maybe ago, but that was probably me. I got my start actually in, the oldest marketing form of the book is telemarketing. And I got good at it, but bored in the same, sense. And I went, I've always had an interest in real estate. I ended up seeing like a random, job advertisement for real estate investors going, hey, I need some help with maybe calling through my leads. And so I dove in and I started off as like prospecting, kind of working hand in hand with the acquisition managers to help with anything that I could do to help click their deals closed out. In exchange, I got to learn a lot about real estate while simultaneously still being able to play with, I was studying mass communications at that particular point. So I could have taken it into marketing and anything that I wanted to get my hands on. I ended up working for, some of you may be familiar with Chris Arnold and his investment company. So I spent about 7-8 years there. And again, I started off by calling leads, talked to so many people that I kept hearing a lot of pain points. And I went, hey, who's doing our marketing, or what's happening with the marketing? I'm picking up on a lot in conversations. I always love talking to people. If you let people talk long enough, they'll tell you everything you need to know about them and then some. And so as I was, doing a lot of prospecting, I'm like, ooh, we could play with this. Ooh, I'm hearing, different pointers. So I ended up convincing, my director at the time to let me take over marketing while simultaneously still studying marketing at the same time. Fast forward, I say about 7-8 years of being the director of marketing for that actual investment company, while also being able to help other investors just through, my director's network. And through that process, I got to tinker and play with all things marketing, which I love. Again, I love talking to people and I love learning new things. So it was like the perfect position. And I tried, we played with everything, cold calling, PPC leads, even something, as I would call it, is like pay per lead, which are kind of like PPC companies that'll do the work for you slightly, but that's that's a different lane there. But direct mail, anything under the sun. Got to a point maybe where direct mail and some of our cold calling started to go a little dry. And we were like, hey, well, what's going on? What can we potentially play with somewhere in between my, 7-year run there? And we started really focusing and hammering out radio, which my director had started prior to me getting on there, but no one had the time. A lot of people have a hard time trying to explore a new channel. So there's a couple of things you want to learn there. You're like, that there's going to be a learning curve. And it's just like, do I want to have to risk the time and maybe the money there? I took it completely over and was like, hey, I'm happy to dive in this world. Found that radio honestly was the least competitive marketing channel out there for investors trying to actually find sellers. And you can turn on your radio now and just listen to the ads. You're not going to catch it. You'll probably catch a couple of realtors out there pitching retail services. And then sometimes people will go, well, hey, if there's already a realtor there, I probably don't need to be there. I'm like, no, that's actually a great sign to be there, because not everyone cares to go through the retail process. A lot of people think, they want the retail price, but then when you explain all of the, showings and you subtract out the commission that the agent is potentially going to get, the seller goes, oh, never mind. Maybe no, if you have a quicker option for me to play with that gets me paid and gets this property off of my hands, I'll still take that. And radio ended up being just that. It's an inbound marketing channel. So those leads are actually coming to us for a change. And for those of you out there, maybe with acquisition managers, or if you're not at that point, inbound marketing leads will make everybody much happier. Doesn't require you to pull as much teeth or maybe as much hunting to kind of get that lead down. But that's in a nutshell of how I kind of got started and got to this particular point.
So when you do the marketing on the radio, are you looking for people that behind on their payments, or are you going more on the wholesale side, or are you going just trying to find someone who wants to sell their house? What is your target market when you do radio?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our company was purely just focused on the wholesaling side. Now, of course, I still have students. Once I kind of got it down to a science, because in all honesty, it gets down to rinse and repeat. Once you know who to look for and you know what to say and you know where to find them, it's rinse and repeat, and you can keep growing from station to station from there. And the lucky thing is that a lot of radio stations are operated by some of the same national companies, or at least training the sales reps by the same company. So you start to hear the same exact thing. So I do have, students who maybe were like, hey, I don't know if I care to go jumping into wholesaling, but I do have a real estate license. Maybe I want to help do this and grow my retail business. Works the same way. Again, maybe just tailoring their actual message on the radio the same way you would tailor it on the wholesale side. So yes, in that, in your phrasing, you would be looking to say, hey, I buy houses cash, and then list out some, pain points. And if I had to kind of summarize it, think about maybe the top 3 or 4 pain points that someone potentially could run into of why they would need to sell for cash in the first place. Well, maybe there's time. There's a time sensitivity. Maybe they would like the idea of, hey, I can get your home, we can get a cash offer to you, and, give us a call right now. We'll give you an offer on the phone. We close in as little as XYZ timeframe. You're selling them on the fact that their pain point is time sensitivity. Another issue is that, again, not everyone cares to deal with multiple showings on their property. Again, they want the retail price, not everything that comes included with that. That's another selling point that maybe could be even included in your ad. And I highly recommend things like that as well. Like, hey, not only are we fast, but we don't need to walk through your property. You don't need to do multiple showings. Maybe we only do it once. Or, hey, you could send us a video walkthrough of your home, or take pictures, especially post-pandemic. Believe me, during the pandemic, that was tricky. People are like, I need to sell my property, but do I want people coming inside my home? I'm like, no, just here, take your phone. We'd walk them through, hey, here's what you need to include in the video. Or, hey, if you take pictures, here's the pictures that I need to see in terms of hotspots. And if they did not own an actual camera, what we actually would do in some of our acquisition managers is call them on Facebook and do a Facebook video call and walk them through the same process. So,
yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about how those type of, like COVID and the pandemic, I can see how people would not want to do that. And I think having them go through with the camera, and, actually, if you can do it where it's live, and, that would be really, really good. What are some of the things that you've learned once you've started that it's like, oh boy, it's like, what are some of the pain points on the radio? Have you gotten into some situations that you've really learned from?
In terms of the sellers, as they were calling in.
Yeah. And the seller's number one. And then number two, it's like, oh, I need to adjust the ad this way because I'm not getting any action.
Oh, absolutely. And I would tell, this is a big thing. A lot of people, when you're diving in or trying to think about radio stations, the first mistake is made in the selection of the station. Some people try
No.
and approach it too generically. I mean, believe me, this is why I tell people at a minimum, I love to add value. If I can save you some time and some money, I got put in the hot seat. Like, hey, Grace, this didn't actually pan out. Why didn't that, you said this was going to work. Why didn't that actually happen? And I had to go back to the drawing board and head scratch, like, why didn't this work? And it turns out there was a lot of data missing. You cannot approach radio and think generically like, hey, or maybe the most popular station in my market is exactly what I need to get on. Or, oh, I think I need to hit blue collar people. Let me pick up a country station. It's not that simplistic. It's not complicated, but you do need a little more data just to make sure you cover your bases to truly understand. The thing with radio stations is that they all like to cover audiences, and all audiences will vary. So if I take a country station, for example, yes, there are country stations that reach very blue collar, your regular everyday American. Absolutely. However, there are also the country stations that reach very affluent audiences. If you know that I am chasing people who are potentially in sticky situations or, maybe not so cookie cutter scenarios, who are more likely to take my cash offer, that's usually how it works. Not telling you that rich people don't have problems or, people in, high income brackets, would not sell for cash, in my experience, it's more teeth pulling to get them to actually do it. They're usually the ones that are going to argue about their, retail, and as they should. If you're more well-versed in that, totally understand that. But if you know that you're coming in to invest, wholesaling and potentially picking up a radio station to really just drive the wholesaling side of your business, then you have to be very careful about aligning the actual station with your actual target audience. News talk stations can be the same thing. I made that mistake, believe me. Going, hey, I know I need to reach, maybe there's an age demographic, right? For us, we were like, hey, I'd rather focus on maybe 45, 50 and up. Okay, well, let's grab a news talk station. Well, that blew back in my face. Yes, again, same thing. There's the potential that audience could be slightly more affluent. And actually what I ended up learning is that some of my potential buyers were on those stations, but not the seller, right? So I can actually grow my buyers list by hitting some of those people. But if I was looking for the actual seller, that's not the actual station. You have to be very careful to align it. And stations have this data. Are they going to be super open about, and honest and upfront initially? No, a sales representative at the radio station who is, taking in those phone calls and fielding potential business from you. They're a sales representative. Don't get lost in the radio lingo or the smooth talk, But in their end goal is to get you signed up with something and get you spending some money. And then if it doesn't work out, then they'll say, hey, I'm so sorry, right? And radio, there's no, they're not going to refund you. If you say, hey, you made an agreement to run for blah, blah, blah amount of times on this station and it didn't work for you, the sales rep is actually going to blame you. They're going to say, oh, wow, I'm so sorry to hear that didn't work out for you. When in reality, they probably set you up from the very beginning for failure by not helping you actually get the target correct. And why is that? Is a lot of sales reps just don't have they don't have a deep understanding of real estate, let alone the type of audiences you potentially need to be in front of. Because the audience that you need to get in front of if you're a realtor and looking for retail is one group of people. The audience who is potentially going to sell their homes for cash so you can actually buy it at wholesale, that is a different demographic as well. Those are not the same people. Radio stations, again, like I said, for most people, you're kind of diving in generically. Sometimes the sales representative, even at the radio station, as knowledgeable as they are about radio, they are missing the real estate and at least the wholesaling knowledge to combine that for the best experience.
Now, do you focus on one radio station or do you tell your students, do 30-second ads on like 5 different ones, or do you focus on just one at a time? What's your plan look like?
That's a really, really great question. And twofold is I actually highly recommend, especially as a new advertiser for students, is starting with 60-second ads. 2 things there. Why? One, you really do want enough time to spread out the pain points. again, post-pandemic, you have to imagine a lot of the pain points that maybe someone was dealing with a couple of years ago has started to shift, and there are extra pain points in there. Like, why else should I do it? So you want enough time to really like space those things out of like who you are, what you do, what you provide as a service, how to contact you, pain point, and then a follow-up to that pain point. What do you do with that pain point? Hey, are you looking to, you got junk in your home? No problem, I'll buy it. Because that is a thing. Some people may say, hey, I do want to sell my property. It doesn't look the prettiest. Yeah, I buy ugly houses. You got an ugly house? I'll take it. You got a junky house? I'll take it. You got a stubborn tenant? I'll deal with it. All of those little things. You have to have the pain point, and then, helping them understand if they do indeed call you, what that looks like. So I say 60 seconds to get the message across. Secondly, attention spans are very short.
Yeah.
As and in my experience, I find that most 30-second ads, especially when you're a new advertiser, you're trying to fight a couple of different variables. You're new, you're coming on a station where listeners may not even be familiar with your service. And so their learning curve is they're like, who are you and what do you do? They're learning you and learning this new service at the same time, while simultaneously like listening to you to build up some actual credibility. That can go by so quickly in a 30-second ad, and then they're distracted by whatever comes next. You could say, sell your house from, cash to me today. And then right after your ad, here's an advertisement about, are your kids making a lot of noise? Do you want to get them in summer camp? And then the next ad is, do you have a hole in your roof? Or do you, does your windshield wiper need repair? And then you're sitting in the car going, yeah, the kids in the back seat could go somewhere.
Yeah.
And looking at your windshield and going, yeah, I could get my windshield repaired. So it's not that, they won't sell their house for cash. It's that they get distracted. So that 60-second ads is allowing you to get your message across and also blocking out their attention span. 60 seconds is a lot of time from them to hear your point, hear how to contact you, and start dialing you. And many of our leads actually will call while the ad is still actually playing. Because they're like, oh, let me grab this number.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I hadn't even thought about it. I've had bird dogs and the mass mailers, and how much, and I've done those personally, and I'm like, man, how much time could I save if I just got all these people in once, just because everyone listens to radio. But yeah, I think it's just amazing. So talk us through what you're doing now as far as the coaching side. And, is it online? Is it, take us through the whole thing and where those people can find your courses or whatever you do.
Absolutely. So again, I'm a huge value add person. You can always just, look me up on Facebook if you want to just start getting a feel for it. It's, Facebook, and then my page is literally Grace Mills, REI 2.0, REI 2.0. Of course, now my coaching program, in terms of coaching, I really like to make sure that I prep students as much as possible. Again, I find that a lot of sales reps, and I have to kind of warn people this, I'm like, a sales rep is a sales rep no matter what suit they have on. So don't, the radio sales rep, sometimes can dress so nicely and, talk so smoothly that you're going to take their word for everything. You have to be very careful, again, that they lack expertise and fully understanding where you need to be. So the program that I actually run is, I'm actually a coach on Wholesaling Inc. I think a fellow of my coach actually hopped on your podcast for an hour. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Whereas Brent focused on land, I focus on radio. So if you go over to wholesalinginc.com/radio, you will drop down into my page. And if you have any questions, anything that we can help you with, feel free to just, you can always schedule a call. I'm not one to encourage people to, do something that's not the best fit for your business, right? If you're still trying to sort that out, a phone call might be way easier. Google is only going to get some, so far we're trying to understand like where you should be in your business and if maybe radio would work or not and where that would be pricing. In the program itself, I literally walk through students through the entire process, who to contact, how to contact them. I even equip them with it's, time is money. If I can speed that process up. And then what I would definitely put emphasis on is that pricing radio is important in terms of negotiating. And that's a huge piece of the program. And just so that your audience knows as well, there is almost like a wholesale and retail to radio pricing. So if you were to call a radio station today and just start a random conversation, guarantee you, not only are you going to get the retail price, but they're going to tack like an extra price on there because it's the salesperson, right? Like they're like, oh, the manager may have said like, oh, we're not running, for anything less than $200, and I'm just making that number up. And the sales rep gets on the phone with you and says, yeah, my number is 250. Just for a little razzle dazzle there. But yes, the course I like, coaching students through the entire process of who to contact, how to negotiate it, and really get the best price possible. And then taking it a step further and you understanding what really needs to be in an ad, because that's a make or break. If you get the station wrong, if you negotiate it incorrectly, those are sticky situations to be in and very hard for you to kind of rescue yourself once you're in it. And then thirdly is what is in the ad and the delivery with the ad as well, because some ads can be overdone and underdone, believe me or not. You can go energetic, you want to create urgency, but if you go full OxyClean guy and kind of screaming, you're going to scare someone away. It doesn't sound very genuine. And again, you're dealing with people maybe were not so cute situations. They want to at least feel like it's relatable and that this is a comfortable place for me to come and share whatever it is that I'm going through. So the course, yes, covers all of that. I even include script examples for radio ads, just in case maybe you're getting stuck there. I work one-on-one with students if they want to get a little creative. I've literally had a student go to like a local hip hop artist in his area and literally create like his own, 60-second song with his advertising points all still included. Hit all his pain points, just had a very nice jingle and ring to it. So yeah.
Wow. So yeah, I mean, that's amazing. And it's so funny I don't know how the OxyClean guy just sells and sells and sells, because I'm like, oh, here's the mute button immediately when I hear that voice. But I've learned, and everyone that I've talked to in real estate has said that the wording and how you come across is so important. You can have all the knowledge and all the experience in the world, but if you can't convey those talking points across, then people are just going to tune you out. And I've learned that within the first 5 seconds, you've got to hit something that says, okay, wait, what are they talking about? And listen. It's so important. I did not know that the radio salespeople were that. I mean, what are some of the other things that you have to really watch for in negotiating the price? But I just figured, hey, you want a 60-second ad? Okay, boom, negotiate the price and you're done. There's like time slots, and have you found that there's other variables that are very important in that negotiation?
Absolutely. And this is something that I got an opportunity to, again, like back in my director marketing days, that I took the hard way and learned the hard way, but I tinkered with those things of like, is there, what could we play with? And absolutely. What people miss as well is frequency. So how often you are playing. That can be overdone and underdone as well. There are certain stations, and what I kind of teach students is we look at the size of the station. That's the first way that I teach them how to buy, is understand. And there's like 6 different measurements. So you could say to a sales rep, hey, can you show me the size of your audience? Oh my gosh, are you going to just be like overwhelmed with random like 10 different reports that make absolutely no sense, and then you're going to miss the fine print. Sales reps are like anyone else. You got to watch them on fine print. Or they'll try and use a bunch of big words to kind of confuse you and make it sound like, it's more complicated than what it is. But I like to teach students to kind of watch the size of the audience, because that's where your return is. If there's the size of the audience is one thing, then, why would you be paying 12 times that amount, in terms of a marketing? There's no return there, And so it's the same thing kind of with understanding frequency and how often you could run, or how often you may or may not be able to run. If you do not run enough, people can't hear you. If you run too much, you're going to actually annoy the actual listeners, believe me, and then it hurts you. In the same frame, if this makes sense, if you're played too close together, it can also hurt you as well, depending on the way that that station is laid out and the actual demographic. And so it sounds a lot more complicated, but again, my course really like cleanly explains and actually provides the examples that you need as a guideline, because that is where the learning curve kind of hurts people the most. It's like, all right, well, where exactly should I be looking for or looking less? And again, I learned the hard way. I've had some students come to me and say, hey, well, I tried radio previously in the past and it didn't work out. And I'll look at their schedule and I'm going, well, your sales rep for one shoved like 13 ads within like a 3-hour time frame. And they're like, oh, that's a bad thing. I'm like, yeah, well, why would you want to pay for advertising? And then really all they gave you was 2 hours worth of advertising. And they crammed 13 ads all into that one space. You didn't actually get any wiggle room. What if someone was, available the next hour? You didn't even know. The sales rep didn't even give you that opportunity. They just kind of crammed it all together. And there was no guarantee nor any data showing that playing 13 ads back to back so close together was actually going to even work to your benefit with this particular audience.
Yeah, it sounds like, you really need, ladies and gentlemen, if you're thinking about this, it's a lot of money to fail. So why not use an expert like Grace? And, I've learned that my mentors and my business coaches and things like that have just saved my butt after I've failed. It's like, well, let me fail a couple of times and finally I'm like, okay, I'll spend the money, and do it the right time. But it took me banging my head a few times. One last question before we go. How about like non-radio kind of, what do you call it? Like, the iHearts and then some of the other types of things, those types of radios, Pandoras and things like that. Have you looked at that, or do you just kind of concentrate on the regular radio dial?
No, that's a really great question. What you're hitting on is streaming.
Streaming.
Like platforms. I tell you that, when you think about radio as a product from the sales representative side, there's only so many things that they can sell. And so I'd say in the last 3 years, they have creatively tried to go, okay, now we need to sell digital products. And a lot of your traditional radio stations now also at least have a partnership or hired someone internally to create streaming as well. So, if you were going into a station, they'll say, hey, yeah, here's our traditional to be on the radio. And then here's streaming that will, when people log on, to their website or the app for that actual station, similar to iHeart, that these people will hear this specific set of streaming advertisers separately than what's being played on the actual radio. I would tell you that in my experience, and data is always changing, and I highly encourage students to check in terms of data. In my experience, those audiences are still very young in terms of, especially for streaming radio stations. And so again, that's where you have to be super clear on who exactly am I getting myself in front of, and where are they? And then what is the best message to convey to them once I'm actually there? But I would find that streaming and the other, catch-22 there is, because it's so new, you will find it'll sound like, everyone's looking into streaming, and so should you. So, everyone's going to say, oh, you're missing out. You need to plug in streaming. But with radio, that can be very tricky, again, if that's not your target audience. With traditional radio, just like I mentioned before, collecting as much data as possible, just like there's different age demographics that are listening, different income brackets, there is no guarantee that you're actually in front of a homeowners audience on radio as well. That is a thing. Some radio stations, no rhyme or reason, cater more to renters. If you're not trying to get yourself into renters, you have to be clear on that data. And that would be the same thing with streaming. It's like, and streaming again is something that's so new that they have very little data, or at least it's growing in some places. That's my experience. It's a little young, but if you can find your target audience, feel free to, potentially play with it. I prefer securing traditional radio advertising terms first, then going streaming, because streaming is been so easy to be sold that it doesn't actually mean that it was what's truly best for your business. It just meant it was a cheaper option. Cheap doesn't always mean good.
Yeah. And it seems like if I'm going after homeowners, then I'd get probably the hours that I think maybe the commute in my area, going to work and going, coming from work, kind of hit those spots, I think would be the best. Is that what you're finding, instead of, during the day when people should be working, But now, everyone's kind of working from home and not going to work. So maybe they have the radio on, while they're doing their online work. But
And that's a great point, because sometimes I can worry you're like, are people really listening to the radio? And this is why I tell people to buy it based on the size of the audience, because that data is at a minimum, it's pulled every 30 days. And so I like to watch for dips in listenership. I'm going, are you on a decline? Is it remaining steady? I mean, what I actually look at and encourage students to pull is about 90 days worth of data. Now, again, though, you still have the opportunity to pull, last month's data 100% itself, and I don't mind looking at that. But to truly gauge where you should be negotiating and if it's something that you're pursuing, yes, absolutely. I would definitely always have those reports pulled. Sales reps have them. Again, like I said, though, they're going to try and pretend like they don't know what you're talking about, initially, because once you are aware of what to look for and you understand, that there is data tracking the audience sizes and maybe the shifts in terms of the audience types, as in homeowners, things like that. I have all of those numbers pulled and, walk, my students through how to read them and then follow up with the sales rep to say, hey, but they don't usually have the luxury of staying home. Those are usually the people that are out and about and doing work. They're definitely more likely to end up doing a lot of the blue collar work. They don't have the luxury of staying home. At some point, they're going to end up leaving home.
Wow. Well, it's been fascinating, Grace. I appreciate you coming on today. Everybody, again, Grace Mills, and it's REI Radio 2.0. And you can find her at Grace at wholesalinginc.com, and also on Facebook. Anywhere else?
Yep. And again, my program is Wholesaling Inc. /radio. Facebook page, Grace Mills, REI 2.0. So real estate investing REI 2.0.
Wonderful. Everybody, if you've thought about, perhaps your bird dogs and your direct mailing is not working, well, maybe the radio is the way you need to go. Thank you so much, Grace, and I appreciate you coming on today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
You're welcome.